Thank you all for being here for our legislative spring break update with Missouri Coalition for the Environment. I'm Melissa Vatterott, Policy Director at MCE. We are going to cover what has been going on in Jeff City thus far, what we may be able to expect, though there are a lot of uncertainties when it comes to what the General Assembly is up to and the individuals inside of our legislative body. But we'll certainly share with you what you can do to support Missouri's people and their environment through legislative advocacy. MCE's mission is to educate, organize, and advocate in defense of Missouri's people and their environment. We are a statewide environmental and nonpartisan watchdog and advocacy group. We are focused on always taking action. We don't do it alone. We build power to shape environmental and public health policy and to hold government and corporations accountable. We do this through the 3 verbs in our mission statement: educate, organize, and advocate. And we're also not afraid to litigate when necessary, when our advocacy efforts fall on deaf ears, when we find that communities are being polluted. We are not afraid to take action and ensure that Missourians have environments that are clean and safe to live, work, and play in. Our advocacy work shows up in a few different ways. We advocate through regulation, submitting comments on public permits and proposed rule changes, speaking at public forums with agencies, meeting with agency leaders. We also do our legislative advocacy work, which is the focus of today, which can include drafting legislation, working with legislators to have that legislation introduced. And largely what we'll be talking about today is testifying in support or in opposition of bills that are moving through the legislature. And then we also want to focus on making sure that Missourians have the tools they need to be effective advocates themselves, either with us at MCE or, on their own or in their own small communities, having the tools, feeling confident that they can voice their opinion in an effective way. And so we do a lot of advocacy education as well. So if you're new to the Missouri legislative session, it runs January through May every year. I've listed the variety of issues that MCE follows. Our scope is broad. We have partners who may focus on only a few of these things. For example, Renew Missouri, very focused on renewable energy and energy efficiency. We have partners like a Red Circle who are really passionate about food access, environmental justice, elections. There's the Just Moms STL working to fight the impacts of the Westlake landfill. And so they would be focused, and I don't mean to speak for these groups, but I'm just saying there are some organizations that their scope is more narrow than ours, but we do follow a lot of different issues that impact public health and the environment. So I encourage you, if you're interested in public health and environmental policy, to make sure you're following and connected with an organization or multiple that follow these issues, because we are here analyzing these bills and we can help you hone in your energy, focus your energy on the bills that are most of interest to you. As of the end of the first half of session before spring break, there were over 600 bills in the Senate and over 3,000 bills in the House. MCE is currently tracking over 200 bills, and we alert our followers when high priority bills are moving. If you are not familiar with our bill tracker, I encourage you to check it out, but don't be overwhelmed. What's more important probably is for you to join our MoLeg e-alert to get those notifications of when our priority bills are moving. It is important to note, like I mentioned, there are these 3,600 bills this year. Many of them, most of them, are not moving. So you don't have to worry about tracking all these bills that are moving. Today, we're going to talk about bills that are moving, that are also high priority for MCE. But we do make sure to follow more bills than we actually put in our public facing tracker. That if they move, we want to know. And if they start moving, we move them into the tracker. But internally, we are following, monitoring, if you will, many bills. Just wanted to share a few particular occurrences to note from the legislative session thus far. If you're not familiar, there is a conservative caucus in the Senate that has been holding up progress on all legislation. I've taken a couple screenshots here of some recent articles, and I have the article links available for Sophie if she's willing to drop them in the chat. This article is showing that the Senate has been so preoccupied with redistricting that they have not been able to do much, and voters have asked the courts to step in. I did put this quote in here showing that there are a few Republicans who are pushing for a 7-1 map in terms of our federal, our congressional districts, which would make all but St. Louis the district in which St. Louis is located to be Republican dominated. And as a result, they've been so busy arguing about these bills for redistricting that they have been unable to get anything else done. And the Senate isn't getting anything done with the state districts either. So I also shared this article for you to see. There have been a lot of bills that have been really scary. So there's something to be said about the fact that the Senate is preoccupied, being held up rather by the redistricting bills. That bills that are of serious concern to us have not been able to move, but that also means that it's holding up bills that we really care about. Here are some bills that were of particular shock. They are not environmental specifically related, but I just kind of wanted to give you a sense of what's going on if you haven't been following. There are several bills that I believe are all unconstitutional. So we have Senate Bill 956, prohibiting the enforcement of any federal regulation by a state department or agency until enforcement is approved by the General Assembly. That is not the authority of the legislature to decide whether or not to enforce federal regulation, but there are some senators who think that that should be a law that we seek to have, which would be absolutely challenged in court. And same with, I think, the rest of these. So I won't read all of these to you, but they're particularly interesting. And if folks are interested in seeing these particular bills, you can certainly alert us in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, I can put these links directly into the chat for you. There are also 46 bills that are threatening the ability of Missouri residents to participate in our democracy through making it more difficult for us to create initiative petitions, as well as the passage of initiative petitions once they get on the ballot. And then there are several bills impacting voting as well. This 46 number does not include a few bills that are also impacting the Missouri Sunshine Law, which, if you're not familiar with the Missouri Sunshine Law, it is the law that allows the public to request government documentation, basically public records of any sort. And you can obtain this information if you want to know about a potential polluter near your house, or you want to see the meeting notes from a certain government stakeholder group over the last couple of years. You have the right to submit a sunshine request and obtain that information. There are a few bills that are not being covered on this very busy slide. But I just also wanted to mention that there are bills trying to make certain documentation exempted from sunshine requests. So there's a lot going on this slide. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but I think what's most important, and it's what I'll just use it as one example here, is down here, footnote 3 is requiring greater than a majority vote for things to pass. And what that really, we tried to put a lot of information on this slide. What we're actually saying here is that these bills here, HJR 70, 74, 75, etc., they are saying that if a petition initiative gets on the ballot, it can only become law if greater than or equal to the majority of all registered voters vote in favor. So not the majority of all people who come out to vote, but rather basically 51% of all registered voters have to come out and support it. It's complicated. I've actually put the language on a subsequent slide so that you can see that. I think when you read it, it's actually easier to understand than to just try to paraphrase it or restate it. But essentially what we're seeing here are bills that are making it harder for petition initiatives to get enough signatures by requiring signatures from all districts, increasing the percentage of signatures necessary. Then there's also some General Assembly oversight of these petitions. Then there's not allowing courts to oversee the language. Essentially, if the language seems confusing, the courts can try to make it more clear before it hits the ballot. There's an explicit bill seeking to make it so that you can't solicit absentee ballots, and there is an explicit bill basically requiring photo ID, government issued photo ID for voting. So a lot of things. Here are the top priority bills of MCE today since right before spring break. And I will tell you the status of each of these bills. The first bill we're most excited about, well, I'm very excited about it. House Bill 2720 is a bill we actually drafted and we were excited, was introduced the third week of February. So just under a month before spring break occurred. This is our Specialty Agricultural Crops Act. It creates a loan program for small scale fruits and vegetable producers who are also known as specialty crop producers. That's the federal definition of a fruit, vegetable, or tree nut is called a specialty crop. So we're very excited about that. That bill has been second read. And so when we come back from legislative spring break, we hope to have its hearing be scheduled. So if you're interested in that, we'd love to have your support there. Like I mentioned, several threats to public participation. HJR is the one that is an example, one of the most extreme. I will show you that language here in a moment. There are two really positive energy bills that fascinatingly are moving in the Senate, initiated in the Senate and have gotten some traction. So we have Senate Bill 820, which is also known as the Solar Bill of Rights. It prohibits homeowners associations from restricting the installation and use of solar panels, which we think makes total sense to allow people the freedom of choice of how they're going to source their energy, and that they should be able to have that on their homes. And so that bill has been perfected and is set up to have its third reading and then floor debate, very soon after coming back from spring break. Senate Bill 824 is the Community Solar Pilot Program. This is essentially an opportunity for folks who don't want to, residents and individual residents, as well as like commercial buildings, so homes and buildings that don't want to have solar panels on their buildings can come together jointly and have a community solar. They can come together and be acquiring solar from a shared community solar space. And so this is creating a pilot program for that. We're very excited. And that had its hearing on March 2nd. In terms of green space, we have a very concerning bill, House Bill 1972, which is authorizing the sale of 11 Point State Park. This is the second or third year that we've seen this bill, and we need to vehemently oppose it. This passed out of committee, and so it will be, it has not yet got on the calendar for third read, but it did leave committee on March 10th. And then lastly, on March 9th, Senate Bill 918 was voted out of committee. And this is a bill that we saw a bill like it last year that strips DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, of much of its regulatory power related to hazardous waste. Essentially, it says that the DNR can't regulate hazardous waste greater than what is outlined in our federal hazardous waste legislation, which we think is very concerning, because if we have local communities, if we have particular concerns with hazardous waste in our state, DNR should be able to decide to take action that provides greater protection for Missourians than what might be in the federal statutes. Here's that language about HJR 70. So I'll read this to you. It says, any measure proposed by the General Assembly shall take effect when approved by a majority of the votes cast thereon. That just means simple majority of voters who come out and vote. If they support it, then the measure passes. Any measure arising from an initiative by the people shall take effect when approved by a vote greater than or equal to the majority of registered voters in the state and not otherwise. We are currently at MCE exploring putting together a fact sheet that can kind of articulate the number of petition initiatives, ballot initiatives that wouldn't have passed if this was in place over the last several years. Ballot initiatives are a really interesting tool for having the voters in our state engage in legislative policy change. And so this creates an extreme bar for anything to pass via ballot initiative. What can we expect in the last 9 weeks of session? That's where I'm going now, but I could take a moment now and see if anyone has any questions before I go there. I'd be happy to move back a few slides if anyone has any thoughts. If you're good, you can also give me a thumbs up. I just wanted to make a little space.
Yeah, Melissa, I've got a question.
Great.
This is Lyndon. Yeah, what is there a proposal for what the state would do with the money if the 11-point park was sold? What would they do with the proceeds there?
Lyndon, that's a really good question, but it was the result
of a settlement. Yeah.
Settlement. Yeah. Thank you, Lyndon. So I think the idea is that it would, yeah, you might know better than I think the settlement is with the state. So I feel like the funding wouldn't just pool right back to her district. It would go to some general fund in the state. So I don't think she understands that what she's hoping for is not really possible, but I can't speak what is actually going to happen. And I'm sorry about that, but it's a really good question and it's an important one.
No, thanks for your thoughts, and
yeah,
we'll see what happens. I'll let you know if I find it, if I learned anything. Okay.
Yes, please do. Yeah, thank you. So what can we expect in the last 9 weeks of session? Well, it's always unpredictable. I have found in my 9, almost 10 years with MCE, but what I do know from the last 3 years, especially last year, bills can change in these last months regularly as amendments are made. What can happen is that language from certain bills all of a sudden get tacked on as amendments to bills that are already moving. So let's say there's a handful of bills. Let's say, I'm just making this up. Let's say, for example, there are 5 different agricultural bills that a certain interest group has introduced. If one of them starts moving towards the finish line in a significant way, they will try to get the language from those other 4 amended on in committee. That is not supposed to happen unless those other 4 have at least had a committee hearing, but we have seen in the past that the legislature has avoided, they've snuck language in that hasn't even been heard by a committee as an amendment. And it's very scary when all of these amendments can be really terrible things. Another thing that'll happen is language from a bill that is not helpful for the health and the environment gets tacked onto a bill as an amendment where the initial bill was something we really liked. And so then it causes us to change our position. So we saw that actually with an attempt to sell the 11-point a couple years ago. It got attached to a bill that would have been really great for the community around the Westlake landfill, I believe. But when that amendment occurred, we had to change our position. So given this, it's really important to share your thoughts with legislators early and often throughout session so that they know what your opinions are on certain issues and encourage them not to, if they're on a committee that covers a relevant topic, that they don't support amendments on bills that we like that would cause the bill to be one we now must oppose. And MCE will continue to have weekly Missouri Legislature e-alerts to notify you when bills are changing. So we have a couple of opportunities with MCE to voice your opinion with your legislators based on these priority bills that we've outlined and others. Again, you are welcome to talk to your legislators about any bill that's of interest to you. Well, if it's a bill that's on our bill tracker, we are happy to try to assist you with talking points. We have 2 upcoming, well, 3 really opportunities to engage with our support. On March 30th, we're having a virtual luncheon lobby. You can sign up. We'll all be on Zoom at noon, and then we'll all turn our mics on mute, make calls on the bills that we're interested in to our legislators. The legislative staff will speak with you, take note of what you've had to say, and one lucky attendee will get an attendance prize. And then we are offering to set up meetings with your legislators for you and your legislators via Zoom. If others RSVP that are from your same district, then you'd have a small group meeting, which can be fun and can help share, ensure the it can create greater effectiveness of the conversation because multiple people are sharing their experience from the same district. We are looking to set up Zoom meetings with folks with their legislator or their legislator's staff person on both Friday, April 1 and Friday, April 8th. If you would like to participate in any of these, please sign up here. Sophie has the link. And then if you've never talked with your legislator or legislator's staff and you're intimidated by this, I encourage you not to be. When you call, I can almost guarantee that the legislator's staff, actually, I'm confident the legislative staff is who's going to pick up, and it's their job to hear what you have to say and write it down. They're not there to be argumentative, to be angry or disrespectful. It's their job to hear what constituents have to say and relay that to their boss, the legislator. But we did recently have this primer training a few weeks ago to talk about how a lobby day works, what meetings with legislators or their staff looks like. And you can see a skit from my colleague Sophie, who's on the call here, our policy coordinator, and myself, showing you how those meetings work. So I encourage you to check those resources out. And then other ways to get involved in the legislative process with MCE is, like I mentioned already, joining our MoLeg e-alert list. You can also use our advocacy guide and our soon-to-be released legislative instructional videos to assist you with making calls or meeting with your legislators. Our tutorials on how to submit testimony and how to look up bills will be coming very, very soon. And as soon as we have them out, they will be on our website and on social media, and we can make sure to send them to you. And lastly, MCE cannot do this important work without our members. Being able to respond to the issues you care about, be able to hire our interns, pay for us to drive to Jeff City, all of the resources that we need to be effective advocates and to give you the tools you need to be an effective advocate happens in large part because of our members across the state. So if you feel compelled to become a member today, we have that link for you there as well. And that is all I currently have. So I will take any additional questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope that we will be able to advocate with you throughout the rest of the session.